One of the most peculiar and interesting changes that I think a lot of people are glossing over right now is the change that's happening to Divine and Exalted Orbs. Now, I forgive you if you don't know what I'm talking about because it was only a slight mention in the reveal. Chris mentioned that he really does want people to be using Exalted Orbs more often, and to be able to do this, they have decided to, for all intents and purposes, swapped the positions of Exalted and Divine Orbs. What happens to difficult to roll uniques? Are Divines going to be the new de facto king of currency that you use to make large trades? Will Exalted Orbs actually be used to craft gear? And most importantly, how am I gonna clickbait thumbnails anymore? Like, 10 Divines per hour just doesn't hit the same way. So I don't know what I'm gonna do, but as for the rest of that stuff, I'm gonna try to do my best to explain to you what I think is going to be happening in 3.19 with this pretty unassuming but massive change. Now remember, boys, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, if you are as blindsided by this change as I was, you're not alone. I think that this was something I was absolutely not in my wildest dreams expecting them to do. However, it does make sense with what their goals are in Path of Exile. So if you want to know the basics of what's going to be happening, and if you haven't seen the prices of Exalted and Divine Orbs over on the trade website recently, what's happening here is that they are making it so that Divines are now going to most likely be the de facto big currency. We're not talking about mirrors because those are very rarely used by anybody in Path of Exile. So historically in Path of Exile, the way that it's always gone is that the backbone currency of the game has always been the Chaos Orb, and the large scale currency that people tend to make very large trades in has always been the Exalted Orb. The Divine Orb has sat around like 9 to 11 chaos for most of the history of Path of Exile, simply because its one and only real use was that you used it to reroll modifiers on items. There were a few crafts that you could do on the bench that used Divine Orbs, but they were relatively rare, weren't a lot of them, and you didn't use them super often. Exalted Orbs have always been extremely rare because these are the items that allow you to do meta mods. These are the ones that allow you to craft those really powerful modifiers like cannot roll attacks, suffixes can't be changed, 3 crafted modifiers. These enable some of the most powerful crafting options in the game, which are meta mods. On top of that, they are extremely rare, but you might be surprised to find out that Divine Orbs are actually just as rare as Exalted Orbs are. They drop on the ground at the exact same rate. You might be thinking to yourself, well, I've had like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 Divine Orbs, but I barely ever have any Exalted Orbs. Well, the main reason for that is that every single time that you found a 6-link item, you could sell it to a vendor for a Divine Orb. And 6-link items drop a lot more than you might realize. Just earlier in this league, I used 1,000 Divine Orbs on a Forbidden Shaco, as you might have seen in the video previously, which is bricked now. And I'm kind of upset that it's bricked now because these Shakos are going to be so much harder to get. But the idea is that the Divine Orb is just, randomize the random attributes of an item. An Exalted Orb is used for tons of different things. However, they have decided to flip that on its head. Going forward in 3.19, the way that this is going to work is that Exalted Orbs are going to be the orbs that you do small crafts with and are gonna be more common, and Divine Orbs are going to be the orbs that you use for meta mods and all of the big, giant, powerful crafting options, and they are removing the vendor recipe. The new vendor recipe, when you sell a 6-link item to a vendor, is going to be 20 fusings. Now, this has positive implications in the sense that fusings are probably going to go down in price and it's going to be easier to link your items, but there are a ton of other implications on what this is going to cause. Notably, if you think about all of the sources of Exalted Orbs, there's even one that you can see here. If we look at divination cards, right, and we look at ones for Exalted Orbs, there are a ton of different divination cards that are available for Exalted Orbs, more than what you see here, right? There are a ton of these. They drop in all kinds of different places. They're very highly sought after, and, people just think, oh, Exalted Orb, good item. I need to really make sure that I go for this. Get tons of them so I can buy my items. If you look for Divine Orbs, there's only one card, and it's the Sephiroth, and this card is absurdly rare. It drops off of what, like bosses that have like the Tower of God map or whatever it is. I think that's the only place that this drops. I may be wrong there, but this is a super rare card. So there aren't divine shards There aren't even close to as many sources of divine like creation compared to exalteds, and these are going to be the new de facto expensive currency. So what this means, first and foremost, the very first thing that I thought about was that unique items that have very variable roles now, think of things like Ashes of the Stars. This item is substantially different depending on what the roles are. Now, there's a bug where anything that says FF in any of my items just isn't showing up for some reason. I have no idea why, so ignore that. But if you look at this item, the two very important lines on this are the increased reservation efficiency of skills and the quality of all skill gems. Of course, the other lines matter, but these are the two that can roll varying amounts of power, essentially. So now, going forward, if you think that a Divine Orb is going to cost the same exact amount as an Exalted Orb, potentially more for some other reasons, and I'll talk about what other implications that has, think about the difference between a Ashes of the Stars that is like 1020 versus an Ashes of the Stars that's a 2030. So say that you spend all of this time and you're going to be farming up whatever item that you're wanting to get, whether it be like an Ashes of the Stars or a Mage Blood or anything else, right? Doesn't matter what it is. You farm up that item and it's got some crazy rolls that you need to differentiate between. And you drop one and it drops minimum roll. And you're like, okay, well, it's not so bad. I can just hit it with a Divine Orb. Well, now you're spending about like 130, 150 Chaos worth of one Divine Orb to be able to re-roll it. And you re-roll it and it goes up by one number. And you're like, oh, that really sucks. I just spent a whole Exalted worth of money on an item that's typically worth 25 to 50 Exalt, and it didn't get any better, right? So you use another one, and it goes back down to minimum roll. And then you find yourself in a situation where you spent 5 to 6 of them, and you still don't have a good item. There are also other situations where you're just going to drop a really good version of this, and it's going to sell for even more than what it did previously, because getting the good versions of these items that have such insanely different rolls on them, those very good versions are probably going to sell for more than they did previously, and I'm expecting that the price of the top end is going to go way up, but the price of the bottom end isn't going to go down that much. I hope that I'm wrong here, and I hope that the bottom end of some of these items does get a little bit lower, but for some reason in my head, I don't think that it's going to happen. So on top of the changes that they're making to where certain unique items that just drop from various places in the game are going to be more rare, they're trying to make unique items just better in general and make them more impactful when they do happen. But they said that they're going to be nerfing the drop rate of uniques from various stuff just in general, so we need to take that into account. Now, another thing that this is going to impact is going to be items like the Forbidden Shaco, things like Ventor's Gamble, things like Timeless Jewels, things where you need to divine them a whole bunch of times to be able to potentially get a good modifier, a good item out of them. Now, they've said that they're going to increase the drop rates of these items, but I don't know that they're going to increase the drop rate enough to counteract how much of a difference it's going to be for people being able to just hit these with divines as much as they want. So there is a potential that items like Forbidden Shaco are going to be substantially more difficult to get good versions of. Now, there is one other additional problem here that isn't going to be as big of a deal, I don't think, but it's something that we should at least be thinking of. Now, I have no idea what the price of divines is going to go up to in 3.19. This is one of those situations where it's like, you can kind of see the pieces that are going to be put into play and know that something is going to happen. But when it comes to the actual prices of these items, like the price of an Exalted Orb, the price of a Divine Orb, the price of even a Chaos Orb going forward, we really can't know. However, in my opinion, the price of a Divine Orb going forward is most likely going to be more expensive than the price of an Exalted Orb historically. And that has one pretty decent implication. The size of the inventory is very specific. GGG has set up the inventory so that there is a certain weight to each item that you are going to pick up at any given time, right? Items that have more slots, take up more room, tend to have more impact, more weight, more feeling to them. And certain currencies can only stack up to certain sizes because they are meant to have more weight to them. You're only meant to be able to carry a certain amount at any given time. So if Divine Orbs are going to cost significantly more than what Exalted Orbs do now, most likely, because there are going to be so many fewer of them dropping, if the price of this gets too high, it's going to limit the amount of them or the amount of items you can even trade at one time. The process of trading with someone like Exalts to Chaos right now is already kind of a nightmare. So if we see prices of Divine Orbs going up to like past 200 Chaos, you can only fit 600 Chaos in an inventory at any given time. That means at most, if it goes past 200 Chaos per Divine Orb, which it could, at most you can trade 2 of them per inventory. And I feel that that's going to be insanely frustrating. You're going to have to like stock up on Exalted Orbs as well, and you're going to have to trade in like weird volumes of currency. I don't know how the market is going to adjust to this. I don't know what we're going to do. I genuinely wish that when we were trading with people, we would have just a separate trade window that we could use with our stash or something like that. I don't know what the like implications of that are from like a software development like point of view, but we're starting to hit that point where I feel like in general trade, like the physical act of trading with another person is just getting frustrating. And I hope that if those problems do arise in 3.19, it spurs some kind of conversation about getting them fixed potentially in the near future. And that is going to be it for the video. If you have any other concerns or ideas on what's going to happen with this new big change between Exalted and Divine Orbs, make sure to let me know down in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think is going to happen. Do you think that I'm right? Do you think that something else completely entirely different is going to happen? Do you think that people are actually going to craft with Exalted Orbs now? I mean, I still don't know that I would use them that more often, but if Exalted Orbs are only going to be like 20 or 30 Chaos, I might click them, honestly, a little bit more than I did before. So remember, boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Ray Class, and I'll see you guys in 3.19 Lake of Kalandra.